eat it like this. Now I can eat it like this now.
Yummy?
Yeah.
When does your sourdough rise? When you least expect it. Okay, that's enough of that. I'm actually really excited to share this recipe with you. Today we're making oladья. They're fat Russian pancakes that my dad makes and just blows everyone away. And the main difference between these pancakes and the pancakes you would get in IHOP or in most places and households in the West is it uses yeast as the rising agent instead of baking powder or soda. Soda and baking powder are, a quick cheat for, the rising of flour, but they don't offer any nutritional value. They don't offer anything beneficial for the body. And unfortunately, baker's yeast, like the stuff you get in the stores, also doesn't help. We're going to be using a natural sourdough starter. Now, pre-industrialized society would always use naturally leavened bread. It was a basic staple in most households. And because of the natural yeasts, the fermentation of the bread would break down the proteins in the gluten. So things were much easier to digest. Now, the baker's yeast just works on sugars and doesn't add anything of benefit to you. Baker's yeast is a single strand yeast. So the microbiome of the yeast is like non-existent really. Also, it's very interesting that in France, a lot of people actually pushed back on the introduction of baker's yeast into their culture. It was a quicker and cheaper way of rising bread, but the culture there knew, like almost intuitively before any studies were able to be conducted, that this is not good for you. Here's a quick segment from Nourishing Traditions about bread making. It was simpler to replace natural leaven with brewer's yeast. There are numerous practical advantages. The fermentation is more regular and more rapid. The bread rises better. But the fermentation becomes mainly an alcoholic fermentation and the acidification is greatly lessened. The bread is less digestible, less tasty, and spoils more easily. It's also interesting to note that a lot of people with gluten intolerance can eat sourdough. Here is a list of just some of the things that sourdough is good for. So it actually inhibits the growth of bad bacteria. It dissolves protein by producing protein enzymes, loosening multiple peptide bonds so that you can absorb more amino acids in your body. It helps you absorb calcium, which you need for magnesium, which you need for vitamin E, vitamin C, provides vitamin B1 through B6, and also B12 that is contained in the actual yeast. A lot of this is done by offsetting the effects of phytic acid, which actually prevents us from absorbing a lot of key nutrients. And phytic acid is all over the place, like in nuts, seeds, and grains. So when you ferment the grain, when you sour, your starter, then a lot of the phytic acid is offset that already exists in the flour that you're using. This is really good news, especially for people who love bread. Who doesn't love bread? You can probably still have some as long as it's sourdough. Let's go over the ingredients. The first ingredient is your sourdough starter. There are thousands of sourdough starter recipes online and in many, many cookbooks. I used one that took 1/3 of a cup of 3 different types of flour, and I put some probiotic yogurt and chopped up rhubarb at the very beginning in mine. This is considered a bit of a cheat in a lot of bread making circles. You don't have to do it. To make a sourdough starter, you just have to put some water and some flour and leave it out. The natural yeast lives in the air and it will, infest your wet flour and start bubbling up. Basically, you leave it out at room temperature and it'll start to rise and fall and rise and fall. And you feed it daily. Feeding it means you take some of the concoction out and you throw it out, or you use it for pancakes. And then you put some fresh flour in. please look up the specific process because there's a bit of a knack to it. It's not complicated. Anyone can do it, but you need a little bit of experience. Okay. This is my mother. No, it's not my dead cremated mother stuffed in a vase. The mother is another name for your sourdough starter. I keep mine in the fridge. Oh, look at that. Look how bubbly it is. Wow. You see? That's not, I didn't put that much flour in it. That is it being alive. Like, that is beautiful. So, it smells great. It smells so good. I've had this for about a month and I keep it in the fridge and I feed it every 3 days. And when I take the excess out, I try to make, you know, sourdough biscuits or sourdough pancakes or something with sourdough, but sometimes I throw it out. Okay, so we're going to need about 1 cup of this. I have a big bowl, measuring cup, and I'll go over the other ingredients before we begin. So we're gonna do 1 cup of sourdough starter. We're going to do about 1 liter of milk. This is whole milk. I actually warmed it up a little bit past room temperature because if your sourdough starter is in warm milk, it'll be in heaven. It'll, the process of the activated process of the yeast will just speed up. Now, do not put it in hot milk. You'll kill the yeast. Remember, it is an animal. It is alive. Okay, I do 3 eggs. I do 50 grams or 1/4 of a cup of butter. You want to melt this more. I haven't melted it yet, but you want it runny. Salt, of course, and you know, if you're gonna cheat, you could use about 2 teaspoons of a baker's yeast. I suggest you don't cheat and you go through the process of making your very own mother. It pays off, and if you have a gluten intolerance, it might prove to be the only way you can eat bread-based things like pancakes. And I'm gonna use a little bit of honey, like a tablespoon of raw honey. So, oh yeah, and of course we're putting flour in it. You can use any kind of flour. I just use white flour. You can use spelt flour, which has even less gluten. You can use whole, whatever you want. Use whatever flour you want. And the flour, there's no measurement for it. You're going to be looking for a specific type of consistency. So basically we're doing all our wet ingredients. We're waiting for everything to bubble up for a few hours. And then we're going to put flour in this. We're going to shake it in here a little bit at a time, stir it up. And when the gloopiness of the dough is perfect, and I will show you what that perfect looks like, we will fry up the pancakes. So first, I'm going to do the eggs. Crack the eggs. Take my honey. You don't need a lot. Because if it's not sweet enough for you, like the final product is usually not that sweet, you can put jam on it, you can put raw honey on it. My favorite combo is a little bit of raw honey and sour cream. It's the best, I promise. The butter is pretty, yeah, I mean, it's so mushy. That should be okay. Put the milk in. I like a whole milk. It's nice and fatty. See, I think, yeah, the butter's gonna finish up its melting process because of the warm milk. Like, there's just so much air in here. It smells so good. That's 1/2 cup. And see how sticky it is? Beautiful. There we go. So, because I've taken so much out, I'm gonna feed it right now. So you just stir it up like this. It's actually amazing how much it bubbles up in a cold place like the fridge. So back you go, mother. See you later. Now you're going to take the flour about 1 cup at a time and you're gonna shake it in here to avoid clumps. Oh, salt. Forgot the salt, that's okay. Put it in on the go. See, it's a little clumpy, but that'll sort itself out when you add more flour. This is a little bit too runny still, so we're gonna do another cup. It's almost there. Maybe half a cup more. We are done adding the flour. This is the consistency we're left with. It may seem a little too gloopy, but it's always better to be on the gloopy side because you can add more flour in. Also, we're gonna leave this for a couple of hours to let the sourdough do its job. It's gonna start bubbling up, and I find that because of that process, it becomes a lot more sticky anyways. So I suggest covering it with a towel. Let's go like this. And put it somewhere not cold. Put it in the warmest part of your home because it'll speed up the process. I will talk to you guys in 3 to 5 hours. You see this bubbling?
What's the bubbling mean?
It means it's alive and the yeast is activated.
Yeah.
The pan is medium hot and I'm using sunflower oil because Slav. You can use avocado oil. Butter is a little tricky. You have to use a lot of butter or it will stick. And then you don't want to make them too big. About that size is good. And they'll start to rise as they fry as well. So it's a very beautiful process. Yeah. Pretty, pretty, pretty. The laddi are done. This is what they look like, all golden and stacked. And if you're wondering where my tracksuit went, I'll be taking these guys to Orthodox church and hopefully giving everyone a taste of home. Anyways, good luck on your sourdough journey and stay healthy, stay Slav.